Okay, so there are 8 watercolor techniques that you are going to learn. This is what your piece of paper should look like before you start. So make sure that that has happened. You should have all 8 of these listed. So to do a wash, that is the most basic of the 8 techniques. You will of course need a container of water, and you dip your paintbrush in water, you dip your paintbrush in paint, and then a wash is just one flat shade of color. So it doesn't change in value, the darks and lights stay exactly the same. Always pick up more water or more paint if you need it. And you can just paint your whole square or a patch of your square according to that color. So that is a wash of red paint. A graded wash, the second one, is graded means it's changing from light to dark. So here's what you do for a graded wash. I will choose blue, so I cleaned out my brush beforehand. I'll stick it in the blue paint, get a good amount on there, and I will draw or paint a line of that color. And you want that color to be pretty dark. You want to really be able to see that color at the top. I need this to change from dark to light. So I'm going to add more water to my brush and not pick up any more paint, but you'll see when you just add more water, it makes it lighter as it flows all the way down. So you want it to gradually shift from absolute dark to absolute light. If you want it to look even darker toward the top, you can pick up more paint. You can see I'm dabbing some of it off on this paper towel over here, so I want more paint and less water, and then I can work to spread that out. But you want it to gradually fade from light to dark. I could pick up more water if I want to, and then we have a graded wash. The third one, wet on wet, it's supposed to be 3 words, is kind of different because you start just with clean water. So I'm really trying to rinse my brush out. I will put clean, clear water on in this section. So that's wet. It's wet paint going on wet paper. That's why it's called wet on wet. So I'll start with that. Then I'll get my brush wet again. I'll pick up some of a color. So maybe I'll do a little bit of purple in this one, or violet. I'll really get a lot of paint on the brush, and then as soon as I start doing this, and you can see if I add a little bit more water, it starts to kind of spread out. It makes kind of a blurry effect. Maybe I'll add some red, since I already have that going. You can see it, I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see it sort of spreads out like that. So it's kind of cool with wet on wet to use a couple of different colors that blend nicely together, and it'll keep spreading out. Don't have puddles. You don't want puddles on any of these, but that's something you can think about. Lift out is the fourth one. So with lift out, this is actually a really good way to erase if you need to. So I actually started with wet on wet. I don't have to do that. I'll do black, I guess. This is a great way to erase if you make a mistake. It's also a great way to add clouds if you're working on a landscape. Clouds work really well with this type of a technique. So you paint a color. I'm just doing a regular wash of a color. I'm choosing black. Make it nice and dark. You want a lot of the color. You don't want it to be super faded. Then you'll take a paper towel and you want to crumple it up like this so you have lots of wrinkles in it. And then you dab out certain places, and I'm kind of turning the paper towel as I go so I get different wrinkles. And that, do you see how that kind of looks like clouds? That's kind of an interesting technique to use for that. Also a good way to erase while it's still wet if you make a mistake. The fourth one is called sgraffito. So for the fourth one, it's kind of cool. You take your paintbrush. I will go back to blue for this one. So you take your paintbrush and you do a wash of the color. You want it to be fairly dark again for this one, just like we talked about for some other ones. A wash of color. Then, once you have a nice saturated color, you will take this end of your paintbrush, so the handle end of your paintbrush, you'll tip it over, and you can draw things with that end of the paintbrush. And what happens is the paint kind of seeps into those areas that you have scratched into the drawing, and you will have what's called sgraffito. You'll have these scratches happening. So that's how you do sgraffito. When it dries, it'll show up even more. Dry brush is the 6th one. With this one, you still need water on your brush, but you want less water on your brush. So I'll clean out the blue, and maybe I'll do kind of orange and yellow for this, like it's a grassy area maybe. So of course I need water on my brush to get paint on my brush, but I'll kind of saturate it with the paint. And then you can see, I think you can see over here, I'm trying to get some of that out. I'm trying to sop some of the water out on a paper towel. Then when I paint with the brush, it'll be your goal is to make it a little more dry and scratchy looking. In a lot of cases, you sort of want the paper to show through a little bit. This is a good technique to use if you're doing grass. I could have put down a layer of yellow and then put the dry brush over the top, and it makes kind of a grassy effect over everything. The next one is called Salt. This is a really fun one. With this one, you use an extra medium. So I am going to put black on my paintbrush first, and you want quite a bit of water. You want quite a bit of paint with this so that it's nice and dark, but you also want quite a bit of water on here. Because what's going to happen is, I'm going to put quite a bit of water on here. Once you have your paint and water on there, right away, before it has a whole lot of time to dry, you will sprinkle salt all over everything. If you have too much paint and therefore not enough water, this salt will stick forever and it won't come off. If you have too little paint, so like if you have a really, really light color, it won't show up very well. Now what'll happen is I'll let that dry, probably overnight, and then when I scrape it off, I should get kind of a crystallized effect. So we'll see what happens. That's salt. The next one and the last one is Wax Resist. For this one, you will use a chalk pastel, and these are like a waxy consistency. We've used them before, so maybe you remember that. And you can create some sort of design. So maybe I'm just going to do sort of random shapes over here. I purposely chose white, so it would be kind of hard for you to see what it is, but hopefully if this goes as planned, you'll see this design show up. So once I have drawn with the oil pastel, you can also use crayon, then you pick up some paint. You want a fair amount of water with this as well. But what you should notice as I'm going over this is you can see the wax, the oil pastel, is basically pushing the water off of the crayon, and so it's making this resist feeling. So the white shows through. So if you want something to show through from the background, you could use white. You can really use any color with this, but that would be Wax Resist. Make sure as you're doing this that you're keeping your palette clean, your palette of colors clean in between each time. I notice my white is a little messy, so if I wanted to clean that out, as long as my water is nice and clean, I can clean my brush, and then I can put clean water inside here. Maybe I need a little bit more. Get it nice and saturated with water, and then I can pick up a clean part of my paper towel and I can dab that area to try to get rid of any other colors. I still see a little bit of purple in there that I should get rid of, but remember to try to keep this clean and as dry as possible throughout. You can always change your water. I might be getting to a point where I want new water. Good luck!